Just learn a build order. That's the advice that most people are given when they're first starting out or are struggling to improve. This is actually great advice, but the problem is that pretty much all build orders that you'll find try to be as efficient as possible to hit the earliest timing for an attack. This works great for intermediate and higher level players and is eventually what you should strive for, but after watching plenty of lower level games, it's apparent that efficiency and speed is something that should only be worked on after the fundamentals can be executed correctly. This means that you shouldn't be trying to play super fast if you don't even know your hotkeys, and you shouldn't try to micromanage your military too much while you have trouble spending your resources effectively. Learning good habits as soon as possible and then building off of those good habits is the key to reaching higher levels. If your foundation is shaky, then you can only go so far until you have to relearn everything in order to improve. For this reason, I propose this build order, which can serve as the foundation to build upon that will allow for easy follow-ups to most strategies. Since this build order focuses on improving skills and not hitting specific timings, the villager counts that I give on when to go to the next age and other things are just benchmarks for when you go over your replay to see how you did. You don't have to be exact on these timings, but if you are, then you'll have a more objective view on if you played well. The most important thing to try to do is to do things in the correct order when spending resources. For example, don't create a blacksmith at the start of Feudal Age if you don't intend to use it right away, since the wood spent on it could have been used for something that's immediately useful, such as farms or a stable. Everything that you do should have some kind of intention behind it. If you place a barracks, you should have the intention to use it to create units or as a prerequisite for the stable or archery range. If you move your army, it should be for a purpose such as going to intercept an enemy or going to attack. If you always act with intention, then you will slowly become faster as you build more experience. It all comes back to doing things properly from the start. And without further ado, let's get into the build. Any civilization with a standard start can use this build order. This includes all civilizations except for Chinese and Mayans. Those civs start with extra villagers and adjusted starting resources, so they're slightly different for the first little while. Gujaras, Georgians, and Burgundians also have somewhat different starts, so watch out for those. Alright, right away, queue a villager in the TC, and then make a house with 2 villagers and another house with the remaining one. As with almost all build orders, the opening 6 villagers go to food. This is because it takes roughly 6 on food to maintain villager production for one town center. After 6 on food, we'll send 4 villagers to wood. This will give us all the wood that we need to make sure we have our walls up before we reach Feudal Age. One of these woodcutters should build 2 houses, which will be used as part of your wall later. This also means that we won't have to think about building houses again in Dark Age. After 4 on wood, it's time to bring in our first boar. If you're not sure how to lure it to your town center properly, then check out my How to Improve series Part 1 for some tips. If you're not comfortable with luring the boar properly, then load up a single player game and practice. After bringing in the boar, set your town center rally point to it and get up to 9 on food. You can see how many villagers you have on a particular resource by checking the small number next to your food count. Looking at your resources often is very important in order to spend them effectively, so try to get in the habit of looking at them when you can. The second boar hunter can go out when the first one has less than 200 food remaining on it. Once the second boar is in, the next step is to start sending villagers to berries. The target number to berries is between 3 and 5. Most games, going 4 on berries is completely fine, so you can usually try for 4, but it's not a big deal if you're plus or minus 1. The next big step is when your boar runs out. At this point, you should be able to click to the Feudal Age with the food that you've collected, so it's time to get a second lumber camp and wall up your base. You can actually start walling a little bit earlier with that villager that built the 2 houses next to your lumber camp, but if you haven't started your walling yet, this is the time. Your villager eco distribution is what you should pay attention to here. 9 on wood with 2 lumber camps, 4 on berries, 8 on sheep. After you have 20 villagers, which should be 21 population if you include your scout, research Loom from the town center and then go to Feudal Age. Even before you're ready to click to Feudal Age, start walling with at least 2 villagers. These villagers should be taken from wood, so instead of 9 on wood, you'll have 7 on wood if you use 2. Depending on how much walling you need to do, you might use more or less to wall. Check out this video where I go through tons of considerations for walling. Your goal here is to be fully walled by the time you reach Feudal Age. This will give you time to react to any enemy attack and not get overwhelmed. You'll want to practice making your walls smaller than you might intuitively think, favoring resource or small walls most of the time on the most common map, Arabia. Part of your wall, preferably on the front, should have a barracks, so you can create spearmen against enemy scouts, or build an archery range and skirmishers against anything else. After your walling villagers finish their job, you can check your eco balance again. 9 woodcutters across 2 wood lines, 4 on berries, and the rest under your town center. If you run out of sheep, put the shepherds on straggler trees and wait until you have horse collar before adding farms. If you couldn't find all 6 sheep at the start, adding up to 4 farms without horse collar is also fine. This adaptation can also be used when you have 1 less boar for whatever reason. Adding 2 to 4 farms in Dark Age will help you get to Feudal Age on time if you're short on meat. Make sure you have a villager in the queue behind Feudal Age so you don't have to think about it for a little while after reaching the next age. Immediately upon Feudal Age, research Double Bit Axe and Horse Collar. Once Horse Collar comes in, use all of your remaining wood on farms with your straggler tree villagers. Your town center's rally point should be set to straggler trees, and you can get these new villagers to make a farm when you remember and have 60 wood. Since you should always keep your town center running, you'll want to take a quick look at the area around your town center after a villager is created if you don't have anything else that's important to do. You'll notice that I haven't said to build an archery range or stable yet. That's because at this level, defense with walls is significantly easier than aggression in Feudal Age. The basic strategy here is to defend against everything in Feudal Age in order to get to Castle Age in a decent position and then create mass knights and attack soon after reaching Castle Age. That said, there are a few things we need to keep in mind to successfully defend in Feudal Age. First, unit counters. Since we're not going to be on gold until just before we want to go to Castle Age, the only units available are the Scout Cavalry, Spearmen, and Skirmisher. Villagers can also be used to fight in a few cases, but you're generally better off running them to your town center if they're under attack. The units that your opponent can build are Men-at-Arms, Scout Cavalry, Archers, Skirmishers, and Spearmen. For American civs, they also have access to Eagle Scouts, and for Gajars, they have access to the Camel Scout. This might seem like a lot that you have to remember, but actually it's simple. Against scouts, make a few spearmen, and against everything else, make skirmishers. This does rely on your opponent not getting into your base, so make sure you build additional buildings behind your initial palisade walls wherever the opponent attacks. Since your barracks should be built as part of your walls, you can rally spearmen outside to go and patrol the perimeter of your walls if the opponent goes scouts. Usually, no more than 3 should be produced. If the opponent is going heavy into scouts, your best bet is usually to use your resources to get to Castle Age for knights, not make more spearmen. You can always make a few more spearmen on the way to Castle Age if you feel it's necessary though. Against things that are not scouts, as I said, make skirmishers. Since skirmishers train very fast and you have walls to spot for early attacks, you can make your archery range when the opponent attacks your walls, or if you spotted the enemy army coming to attack you, you can place it at that time. Skirmishers benefit a lot from having fletching when they're behind walls because the extra damage and range allows you to hit enemies without taking much, if any, in return. Against Men-at-Arms, fletching doubles skirmisher damage output from 1 to 2. Against spearmen and archers, skirmishers already do bonus damage against them, so fletching is mainly used for the range. And against enemy skirmishers, fletching doesn't increase the damage that you do, but the range can still be useful. The only time you'll want to get armor for your skirmishers is when you're fighting archers and your opponent has at least double your units when you take a fight. Using walls and the range from fletching, unarmored skirmishers can still be useful if used correctly, however. If you're not sure if you need armor for your skirms and your opponent is going mass archers, then it's probably good to just get it, as it's only 100 food. Obviously, the game is a lot more complex than just using these 2 counter units, but for now, just remember these things. 1. Get your walls finished before Feudal Age. 2. Make up to 3 spears against scouts. 3. Make an archery range and skirmishers against everything else. And 4. Reinforce where your opponent is attacking by building additional buildings such as houses, the blacksmith, or the market. If you keep all this in mind, you should be able to defend in most situations. Alright, back to the build. In Feudal Age, we want to get to around 15 farms, but we also need to go to gold at some point. If you start sending villagers to gold around 3 minutes before you want to get to Castle Age, then you should have around 200 gold built up around that time. This equals about 8 villagers, or 5 villagers plus wheelbarrow, in terms of things you can produce if you send villagers one by one to gold before clicking to Castle Age. For example, if you want to go to Castle Age on 35 villagers, then you can send to gold starting with villager 28. If you want to do 33 plus wheelbarrow, start sending at villager 29. These are fairly reasonable times to try to get to Castle Age, so try to remember this. If you're not sure or you forget to go to gold fast enough, placing a market and selling wood is also a reasonable way to click to Castle Age. If you run out of straggler trees and also don't have enough wood for farms, then that's usually a sign you should be sending your villagers to gold. The final eco-management tip for Feudal Age that we'll go over here is what to do with your berry villagers once they deplete. If you time it correctly, you can use these villagers to add farms one by one when the berries are getting low. This reduces walk time as you won't have to send them somewhere else. If you forget to do this, then it's no big deal though. You can just send them all to gold. Also, make sure to have 2 prerequisite buildings made just before clicking to Castle Age. A stable and a blacksmith are necessary for our strategy, so those are good ones to go for. And so, we should be clicked up to Castle Age with somewhere around 31 to 37 villagers and are ready for the next phase, aka the fun part, spamming knights and defeating our opponent. There's a bit of preparation we must do first though. Any time that you're going to the next age, you should get in the habit of thinking about what you'll do as soon as you reach the next age. In this case, we'll be going for knights with 2 stables. It's not as simple as just adding 2 stables and then making knights though. We'll first need to balance our economy to be able to sustain knight production. During the transition from feudal to Castle Age, here's a checklist of things that you should do as preparation for your knight spam. Check your eco balance and make sure you have 9 or 10 on gold, 15 to 17 farms, and the rest on wood. This will give you around the correct resource income for making knights and upgrades. Let's take a look at the economy required for both 2 and 3 stable knight production with 1 TC villagers. For 2 stables, we'll need 18 on farms or 16 with wheelbarrow, plus 12 gold mining gold miners. For 3 stables, we'll need 24 on farms or 21 with wheelbarrow, plus 18 gold mining gold miners. Since we're going to be floating resources while we go up to the Castle Age, you actually want a bit less than the desired villager counts to maintain production, otherwise you'll have too much food or gold. As I said earlier, 9 to 10 on gold and 15 to 17 on food is just about right for 2 stable knights on the way to Castle Age. For 3 stable, you can probably do something like 18 to 20 farms and 12 to 13 on gold. The numbers can't be too specific though, since it's dependent on how many resources you already have floating. The more resources you have floating, the less villagers you need on the way to Castle Age in order to get started with your knight production. Another small thing to mention is that you should probably add a second mining camp to increase efficiency, as if you have too many villagers on a single gold mine, they tend to get stuck or have long walk distances to drop off. I wrote this app that allows you to check the eco balance needed for any combination of units, so check it out if you want numbers for other combinations of units as well. Make sure that you have relevant upgrades. You should already have double bit axe and horse collar from earlier, but it's worth double checking your lumber camp and mill just in case you forgot one of them. The final economy tech that you should get here is gold mining upgrade. This is worth about a villager and a half here and will lead to around 40 gold per minute extra that you'll be getting, so it's definitely a good buy. Next is military upgrades. We're going to want bloodlines from the stable and cavalry attack and armor, aka forging and scale barding armor. You definitely want to get bloodlines before reaching the Castle Age so that you can use your stable for knight production once you get there. Make sure you have 2 stables completed before Castle Age. If you have at least 40 villagers, you can make 3 stables instead, as you'll have enough economy to support more knight production. And try to scout any weak points in your opponent's wall to see what they're doing. If you see that your opponent has a hole in their wall, don't run in with your scout. Wait until you have knights and then send them in. If your opponent is assembling mass spears, I guarantee you'll be able to just spam knights and kill them up until about 1200 elo, and maybe even beyond. Sticking to the plan is the key here. If you don't have your scout cavalry alive, you can make a spearman or send some leftover skirmishers to scout. Just scout the perimeter of your opponent's wall if they're fully walled. Houses and palisade walls that have a large surface area are the weak points in your opponent's walls, so those are the spots you're looking for. If you can remember these 4 steps on the way to Castle Age, you'll be setting yourself up for success. Just to summarize, Step 1, balance your economy. Step 2, get your upgrades. Step 3, add up to 2 or 3 stables. And Step 4, scout your opponent. All this stuff should be done before you reach Castle Age. Okay, now it's time for Castle Age, and as soon as you reach Castle Age, queue knights from all of your stables and then get Bowsaw. If you hold shift, you can queue 5 units at a time, which can save some time here. You can get chain barding armor soon as well. As long as it comes in before you take any fights, then it's on time. Since you're making a lot of units, building a lot of houses is also necessary. Building them behind your palisade walls to reinforce them is always good practice. Once you have around 6 to 10 knights, send them to attack your opponent's base, hopefully at the weak point that you scouted earlier. You should also get husbandry around when you move out as well. Another thing that you need to get the hang of is control grouping your units. Select all of your knights either with the circle select, double click, or select all military hotkey, and then go Control +1 to bind them to the number 1. Then press the number 1 to select your knights, and press 1 twice fast to jump the camera to them. This is very important to be able to do, as it will allow you to manage your economy while also being able to jump back to your army quickly. This is where the basic strategy ends though. If you can execute up to this point decently, then you'll be above 1000 elo for sure. Make sure to never stop knight and villager production, and you'll find that you'll win many games just by getting in with your knights and killing all of your opponent's villagers. There are a couple of follow-ups that are worth trying if you don't end the game with your initial knights. If you're having trouble breaking your enemy's walls, send a villager forward and build a siege workshop near your opponent's base. Then you can start making siege to help break through. If your opponent makes a castle and you really don't think that you'll be able to win with just knights, add 2 more town centers at home and try to expand your economy and push again once you're in Imperial Age and have trebuchets. Let me know in the comments if you have any success with this, and I'm happy to answer questions down in the comment section. See you in the next one.